Today, Mike Tyson took the stand in a dramatic bid to refute charges he raped a young woman. America's boxing superstar is now in the fight of his life, a trial that may determine whether Mike Tyson will ever step into the ring again.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from New York, Forrest Sawyer.
This has been a season for examining the dark side of the American psyche. In a short span, we have witnessed a Supreme Court nominee accused of sexual harassment, a medical student and member of the nation's most prominent political family accused of rape, and now this, one of the best-known sports figures in the world, also accused of rape. And whether he's guilty or innocent of this charge, there is something especially heartbreaking about the spectacle of Mike Tyson. We want to believe in the American dream that a boy could fight his way out of the slums to become a champion and role model. Instead, after Tyson's meteoric rise, he has fallen back into the atmosphere, burning all the way, tumbling from one bad scene to another, on his way to today's fight just to stay out of prison. Mike Tyson has become a different kind of model, a symbol of how easily the best hopes can go wrong. How could a young man who can fight so hard fare so badly? First, some perspective from Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield.
It is a startling, mesmerizing event. A figure so celebrated, so famous around the world, facing a charge as serious as this one. 25-year-old Mike Tyson, the youngest man ever to become heavyweight champion of the world, spoke in public today, not in an attempt to regain his title, nor to explain a dispute with a trainer or with the press. He was in Indianapolis, Indiana, testifying in his own defense against a charge of rape, a charge that could land him in prison for the next 63 years. His 18-year-old accuser has said that Tyson met her at the Miss Black America pageant in Indianapolis last July, lured her to his hotel room, and raped her. Here's what she said when she called 911 the next day.
I was like, hey, no, get off me, please, get off me. And he was like, don't fight me. And the person was a lot stronger than I was, and he just did what he wanted. And I was saying, stop, please, stop. And he just didn't stop.
Basically, I'm confident that I'm innocent. I'm proof that I'm innocent.
Tyson's defense is that there was consensual sex. His defense team has produced witnesses saying that the accuser willingly dated Tyson and that she was openly affectionate with him. But even the defense is not painting Tyson in wholly favorable colors. His own witnesses have described the fighter as making suggestive comments and gestures to many of the young women at the pageant, behavior his lawyers imply should have warned the accuser of what he had in mind.
Tyson along the ropes doing damage.
Tyson's rape trial is only the latest link in a chain of misfortune that has grown almost from the day in late June of 1988, when the 22-year-old with a devastating punch demonstrated his undisputed claim to the heavyweight championship of the world by knocking out Michael Spinks in 91 seconds of the first round. What followed was an angry break with his longtime manager, a car crash rumored to be a suicide attempt, an assault on a TV camera crew, and the breakup of his marriage to actress Robin Givens, which featured this extraordinary admission by Givens on national television.
It's been torture. It's been pure hell.
Then in February of 1990, the man they called Iron Mike lost his title to the unknown Buster Douglas in one of the most shocking upsets in boxing history. Most analysts say he has not been the same fighter since.
He has the qualities, the talent physically, but as you well know, it takes a lot more than that. It takes a lot of mental discipline, and those qualities may be lacking and fatally lacking in terms of him ever achieving any kind of greatness.
It all has the flavor of a fairy tale gone bad, a distasteful turn in a plot line of struggle, redemption, and triumph that's right out of a movie. Here's how the movie version would go. You take a kid from the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, New York, a neighborhood of projects and tenements, where this kid finds himself in big-time trouble before he's old enough to shave. He's saved from a life of crime by the intercession of a living legend of boxing, looking for one last champion. His name was Cus D'Amato, who'd made a heavyweight champion out of Floyd Patterson decades earlier. In Tyson, D'Amato saw a young boy with incredible promise trying to overcome an incredibly troubled background.
Brownsville, Brooklyn is a bad, tough, hard place. The kids carry 9mm pistols. There's a prevalent, almost a gangster culture there, you know? And Mike's from that. And he courts that.
Journalist Jack Newfield remembers Mike Tyson, recalling his Brownsville boyhood.
He described how when he was 12, his M.O. on the streets of Brownsville and Bed-Stuy was to stand outside the supermarket and pretend to be a sweet, nice kid and offer to carry packages for old ladies back to the projects. And once he got them alone in the elevator, he would knock them out and steal their pocketbook.
D'Amato took young Tyson up to the Catskills in upstate New York. He honed Tyson's skills, turned him into the most feared fighter of his generation. But even before the death of D'Amato, there were those who felt a dark side of Mike Tyson had never been fully conquered.
Those of us who knew Mike from the beginning always had a sense of foreboding, always had a sense that he was a time bomb. And I always remembered one of D'Amato's favorite expressions, which was, "Round people don't die square."
That dark side, some argue, was unleashed when his longtime mentors died, and when controversial fight promoter Don King took over Tyson's career.
What is unquestionable is that he's gotten into more public trouble with King than he did with the other guys.
There is, of course, a sharply different view of Mike Tyson that has been much in evidence in Indianapolis during this trial. The view of Tyson as a victim, persecuted for his skin color and his fame. Outside the courtroom, at rallies, his supporters and his entourage paint a portrait of a figure the establishment wants to destroy, an image Mike Tyson embraces.
I fight with God, and with God I can't lose, and I love you all. Thank you.
But even those who have long admired his boxing skills fear for Mike Tyson's future, regardless of the trial's outcome.
Right now, at this stage, I'm not sure even he knows what it would take to turn his life around.
Predicting the outcome of a criminal trial is just about impossible. Predicting the end of the Mike Tyson story may be less impossible. He clearly had the stuff of which heroes are made. But heroes who never learn that they too must live within limits are heroes headed for a very unhappy ending. Jeff Greenfield for Nightline in Brooklyn, New York.
And joining us now is Sonia Steptoe. She is a reporter for Sports Illustrated who has been covering the Tyson trial in Indianapolis. Ms. Steptoe, I suppose there's an unfortunate tendency in these trials to follow them as sporting events and to report on them as they progress. Perhaps that's encouraged by television. It's not a very good idea, but still seasoned court watchers have a sense of how each side is doing. Do you have a feel for the courtroom?
Well, I do, and it's actually fairly readily apparent that the prosecution still seems to have the momentum, even though they rested their case several days ago.
Well, the accuser was a strong witness by all accounts. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. She was very convincing.
And now, of course, the defense had to, I suppose, in the face of that, put Tyson on the stand.
That's right. In addition to her mother took the stand, and in very moving testimony, she wept while she was testifying, talked about the changes in her daughter's personality as a result of the alleged attack.
Was Tyson a strong witness?
Well, in a way he wasn't. I mean, he's certainly a strong presence, but Forrest, I tell you, he whispered today on the stand. It was really hard to hear him. He fairly whispered. And you would expect that facing this kind of a charge, he had to tell the most important story of his career, that he would want to fairly shout it from the mountaintops. But instead, he spoke very softly, and I don't know that he was able to capture the jurors' attention quite the way the young woman was able to last week.
Do you get the sense that this trial is going to come down finally to whether the jurors choose to believe the accuser or Tyson?
Absolutely, absolutely. You cannot believe one part of one story and one part of the other. They are so vastly different. It's as if those two people were in different rooms on that evening. And I think the jury's going to have to believe either her or him.
What's left at this point?
What's left at this point is the cross-examination of Mike Tyson, and that is going to be really tough for him because today he was essentially led through his testimony by Vincent Fuller, his attorney. Monday, well, actually starting tomorrow, we've got Saturday sessions here. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., he's going to be cross-examined by Gregory Garrison, the special prosecutor in this case, and he's tough.
So we're not likely to see this go to jury until Monday, probably?
That would be my guess, yeah.
Sonia Steptoe with Sports Illustrated. Thanks very much, Sonia. We'll be back here in just a moment. When we come back, we will talk with the author of a book on the pressures and dangers boxers face, both inside the ring and out. And we'll also talk with Jose Torres, a former light heavyweight champion. Torres has written a controversial biography of Mike Tyson, an account that has led Tyson to call Torres a traitor. Joining us from our Washington studio is Ralph Wiley, the author of Serenity, a boxing memoir, and a former writer for Sports Illustrated magazine. And from our New York studios, former light heavyweight champion Jose Torres. Torres has known Tyson for over a decade. Jose, you have known Mike Tyson in good times and bad. It's been a stormy relationship, I know, but is the man that you are hearing about in the courtroom the same man that you knew?
Well, at the beginning, when I first met him, which was when he was before 13, he looked very shy, and he was a man with a great potential from the beginning. 6 months after I met him, I knew that he would become heavyweight champion of the world. And Coach D'Amato was very confident that if Tyson maintained the desire that he had and the interest that he had in becoming somebody, that he would become champion.
Well, you heard Jack Newfield, who was a writer here in New York, say that Mike Tyson used to talk about the violent times that he had growing up there in that neighborhood, which was an awfully tough neighborhood. And there are those critics of Tyson who say, look, the man was violent inside and outside the ring all along. This kind of thing was inevitable. Do you agree with that?
No, because what you do, Coach was flabbergasted when he found out, Coach D'Amato, that Tyson had these qualities, that he was a cheater, that he was a pickpocket, that he was so mean in the street, and he just transferred all those qualities, quote unquote, into Tyson the fighter. And then Coach engineered and constructed a machine that would be unbeatable inside the ring. And I don't think that Tyson was committing those crimes or after he became a fighter outside the ring.
Well, yeah. But let's set aside what's happening in this courtroom, because right now Mike Tyson is an innocent man under our law. But there are enough documented cases of a man who has been running along the edge and who has been on the brink of violence, and so many cases now that we see a man who's very difficult to control himself outside the ring, don't we?
Absolutely. I became aware of that when I was doing research for the book, and when I sat down with Tyson for hours and hours. He used to call me at my room to come and see him, that he wanted to tell me stuff. And at the time, I thought that Tyson was trying to overcome that violence that he had, and that now with Coach D'Amato, that he was trying, that he would learn to control that violence outside the ring as well as he does inside the ring. Because Tyson is one of the best fighters I have ever seen in my life. And that is due to the fact that he has control of emotions inside the ring.
Mr. Wiley, do you think that Mike Tyson is getting a fair shake in Indianapolis?
Well, of course not, Forrest. I mean, don't be ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you're awfully quick to say, of course not. There are a lot of people who think that that's a fair trial.
Here in Washington, well, I guess the trial will speak for itself in the end. I'm reminded of an old Billie Holiday song called Strange Fruit. Here in Washington, 5 members of the Washington Capitals hockey team were supposedly accused of rape a year or so ago. The whole thing was dropped quickly. St. John's soccer players, lacrosse players, hockey players, I don't know what they were, acquitted of rape. William Kennedy Smith, similar situation, acquitted of rape. If Mike Tyson is convicted of rape in the same scenario, and this is probably something women should discuss, you have a double standard. But looking at it...
What do you mean? Why is that a double standard? Because he's black?
Well, Forrest, that would be for you to figure out.
Well, is that what you're saying?
I think that would be for you to figure out. I think the similarities are the same, except, well, I don't want to discuss Mike Tyson's case because he's paying lawyers a lot of money. And I think money is important here. I mean, Jose Torres got his pound of flesh from Mike Tyson with Fire and Fear. There are a lot of lawyers getting their pound of flesh from Mike Tyson right now, and I wonder how long it'll take for a civil suit to be filed against Mike Tyson after the conviction is probably gotten in this case. I wonder.
Well, Ms. Steptoe, you're watching the trial. Those are strong words to be said about how this is going. If he's found guilty, it is an indication of a double standard. You're not saying, Mr. Wiley, but I'm assuming you're saying it's because of race. Ms. Steptoe, what do you say about that?
Well, I know Ralph, and I don't really have an opinion about that side of this case. I can only tell you what's going on inside the courtroom. And this is, after all, a criminal proceeding. This young woman feels that she was the victim of a crime, and she is asking the legal system for its retribution in under the criminal justice system.
Do you feel that his proceeding is fairly as you're able to determine, and you're a graduate of Duke Law School?
Is it fair? Is that what you asked?
Does it seem to be fairly handled?
Fairly handled, yes, I think so.
All right, let's stop there. Let's move on and talk about boxing and the kinds of pressures that take place in boxing when we continue our discussion in just a moment. Subject is Mike Tyson and the pressures of boxing. Jose, how old was Tyson when he first started boxing?
He was around 12, and he was in jail when he first boxed with the coach who had been trained by Cus before. And when he saw the potential of this young kid, he took him to Cus.
How in the world can a boy who has had the experiences that he had growing up and then is suddenly introduced into the bright lights of boxing and instantly vaulted to that kind of fame and the millions and millions of dollars that are at stake and the pressures and the pushes and the pulls, how can anybody expect him to keep his feet?
It is amazing because at the level that Tyson is right now, you have to have an incredibly complex mind, because at this stage it is no longer a contest of physical abilities, but a contest of character and desire. Because at that stage the physical ability is about the same among all the top contenders and the champion. And Tyson was so smart, and I'm talking about intellectually smart, that he was able to deal with the pressures of boxing, even though it was very hard to live with him in training camp. He used to go berserk 2 and 3 weeks before. And I remember Steve Lott and Kevin Rooney going crazy with this kid because the pressure used to get to him. And they educated him. He was learning more and more. And then, of course, the whole thing went bad when he decided, when he was lured by Duncan to leave the old family.
Mr. Wiley, I saw you kind of shaking your head at one point there. Well, aren't these pressures extraordinary?
Yes, but Mike Tyson is not singular. If you look back at heavyweight champions, I think with the possible exception of Muhammad Ali, they all had very tough, very difficult backgrounds. You don't become the heavyweight champion of the world by singing soprano in the gospel choir at church. It requires a very difficult, hard sort of life because, let's face it, who fights? People that have nothing to lose, basically. You don't become heavyweight champion of the world the same way you are on a track to become a Supreme Court justice. So I think it's a little unfair to try to portray Tyson as an anomaly. I think most heavyweight fighters have had very difficult, very hard, bordering on criminal, if not criminal, backgrounds. So to try to say that Mike Tyson is somewhat different because this is in his background is patently ludicrous.
I believe that that's a myth that has been spread from the beginning of boxing. And because most fighters are poor, Hispanics, and blacks, that has been a condition implanted in the mind of many that you have to be a criminal or a former criminal to be the heavyweight champion of the world. I think if you check, the most sensitive people I have ever met in my life has been fighters, champions of any weight. And we're talking now about, like today, we have 30 champions of the world. Check to see if their backgrounds were that hard. A fighter, a champion of the world, must have an incredible intellectual capacity to be champion of the world and to face the pressures you need someone very special in the head.
Well, it sounds to me as if Jose is lobbying for a new management with Mike Tyson, and that will change everything about him. It sounds as if that's what he's attempting to portray.
No, listen to this. Cus D'Amato, when he had...
but Cus D'Amato is dead.
When he had... No, wait a minute. When he had Tyson, Tyson was a different person. When Bill Cayton and Steve Luck...
Are you trying to say, Jose, basically that you think that this all comes back to Don King, and once Don King began to represent him, then problems began?
I think no problem did not begin, but the problem got worse with Tyson because because Don King is not there to protect Mike Tyson's best interest. Don King is there, and rightly so, to look for the best interest of Don King.
All right,
and that's normal, and that's...
But Bill Cayton isn't. Of course, Bill Cayton and his retinue are there to look after Mike Tyson.
Absolutely.
Let me just interject here. We've only got a few minutes. Bill Cayton is his former manager, a man that Mike Tyson left. He has gone to Don King, who is very well known in the fight business now as a representative. Go ahead,
it comes
Mr.
down
Wiley.
to this. Everybody that you talk to about Mike Tyson is going to have some sort of vested interest, is going to have some sort of personal call.
Well, the thing
in
is,
Sonia's case, Sonia's a woman. She feels very put upon, I'm sure, as a woman. But to try to say Mike Tyson is the man, is the one man that has pained women is false.
All right, Ms. Steptoe, we've got about 15 seconds, and since you were brought into this, you better jump in here.
Do I feel pained by this? I'm just an interested observer, Forrest and Ralph. I think what's interesting to me is the defense that Tyson's lawyers are raising, that he is the stereotypic view of a black
Forgive me,
athlete.
folks, we are right out of time, Jose. I'm very, very sorry. I thank you all for talking with us, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Round 2 in court today for convicted rapist and former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson. Tyson's high-powered lawyer told the Indiana Appeals Court that Tyson's trial last year was flawed, and he called for a rematch with justice. Jacqueline Adams has a report.
Out of the way, please.
His star attorney paraded before the cameras today, as did his star promoter. But neither Mike Tyson nor the woman he was convicted of raping attended today's oral arguments at the Indiana Court of Appeals.
They have treated Mike Tyson in the trial court as though he was Jeffrey Dahmer, Al Capone.
Denied bail during his appeal, Tyson has spent a full year in prison. But finally, his supporters believe the boxer may get a fair shake. Attorney Alan Dershowitz argued that the original trial judge unfairly barred 3 potential defense witnesses who claimed they saw the boxer and Desiree Washington embracing in Tyson's car, and therefore he might have thought she'd consented to sex.
Pray for Mike. I think Mike is a victim. I think it was a travesty that was happening here.
Mike Tyson, a victim? That's what a growing number of prominent African Americans see. That's what's fueling a free Mike Tyson movement here on the streets. Iron Mike, a victim of racism, the thinking goes, a victim of this country's dual system of justice.
He was railroaded. I think that if you just look what happened to Mike and then look at what's his name, Kennedy, all I know is he's walking free, Mike's in the slammer.
Tyson supporters believe any crime against Desiree Washington pales when compared to a system stacked against black men, especially prominent blacks.
You got the most money-making boxer in the history of boxing. And that's just too much control for black folk to have.
But what of Tyson's rape conviction? What of his victim, a black woman?
There is an underlying code in the black community among some people that says that racial solidarity should be valued above all other things.
At the eye of the storm, Mike Tyson remains convinced of his innocence, friends say, and just wants to go home. An appeals court decision, though, could take months. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, New York.
Tonight on A Special Street Stories,
Mike Tyson still heavyweight champion of the world.
He was headed for greatness.
He would have been as great a heroic figure as Muhammad Ali.
But then came the crash.
You think Mike Tyson belongs in jail?
Damn right he belongs in jail. Just like anybody else who commits a rape belongs in jail.
Tonight, for the first time, Mike Tyson talks from prison.
The truth of the matter of what happened that night then is what?
We bring you an extraordinary look at the rise and fall.
Down goes Tyson.
Are you okay, Mike?
Yeah.
of an American champion.
If a woman agrees to go out with you, does that automatically mean that she's agreed to have sex with you?
Oh, absolutely not. Hey, how you doing, my man? All right.
From the streets.
We started stealing all the time.
Weren't you afraid that you get shot?
I was having fun. It was exciting.
You might drop the guy with one punch.
To the ring.
When you're heavyweight champion of the world, you believe that you can get away with anything.
To an Indiana jail cell.
This is a horrible place.
Good evening and welcome to Street Stories. I'm Ed Bradley. He was a great American success story, a street kid who fought his way out of poverty to astounding fame and fortune. But now, at the age of 25, he's in prison, serving a 6-year sentence for rape. Since his trial, Mike Tyson has been silent. We haven't seen or heard from him. He's refused all interviews until now. Tonight, during this hour, Tyson speaks out for the first time about that fateful night in Indianapolis, about his trial and his life behind bars. I spoke with him at the Indiana Youth Center, a medium security prison near Indianapolis. Several weeks earlier, he had been confined for a short time to an isolation cell for making what prison officials say were threatening remarks to a guard. I asked Mike Tyson to tell me what had happened.
Listen, Ed, you know, you're in prison. You're in something that's totally new to you. You know what I mean? On this kind of level. You get provoked. I was provoked. And I said things, and things happened, and I did my time for it. And it was it, and it was over.
Was there a lesson that came out of it?
There's some people in here that lie. You know what I mean? They don't look to the situation. You know what I mean? Because they have the authority, their way is the right way.
And you're talking about the prison guards who are here?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, there's people here that are good people. Don't get me wrong. There are good guards here. But you must think of the mentality that it takes for somebody that want to be a prison guard to have a dying thumb on somebody, to put your foot on somebody's neck. You know what I mean? It's the authority mostly, perhaps, just the authority, being under that kind of authority from a person, which, in my mentality, I would say this person wouldn't even clean my toilet. And then, of course, power is addicting. Anybody wants power, regardless of what kind of power it is. They want it, and I guess this is their way of showing their power.
How have you adjusted to losing power?
I've never lost my power, you know what I mean? Because my power was always in me. My greatest asset is me. It's always me.
I know some of your friends were concerned that you might face some danger in prison, that somebody who doesn't have anything to lose might decide that he's going to make a name for himself and take you on. Do you ever think about that?
Hey, can I tell you something? Why would anybody, you know what I mean? What would he gain by it? Say he cut my throat, he beat me up, he killed me. What would he gain by it?
You feel threatened at all?
Just by the fact that I know that I'm not the most popular inmate in here because, you know what I mean, I stand up for what I believe in, you know what I mean? I basically say what's on my mind, and from prior experience, I know that could land me in a lot of trouble.
What about the inmates? How have the inmates treated you?
I haven't had any problems. Just, you know, sometimes when you walk, and you really couldn't understand this prison because this is not like a prison that you may think. You walk and people, like their homes, people yell out the window, this and that to somebody, and you mother this and this and that and this and that. And one day, so I said, Mike Tyson, you effing tree jumper. And I didn't know what a tree jumper was. I thought he meant like I was a great athlete or something, like jumping out trees. And I was telling them, what's a tree jumper? He said, tree jumper's a rapist. You know, you wait for little kids to go by and you jump out the tree and grab them. I said, oh, Christ. You know what I mean? I said, oh, I can't believe this. You know what I mean? And it just takes your mentality and it puts you in a different assortment than anything else.
During our conversation, Tyson told me from what he sees, drugs, alcohol, and sex are a part of prison life. He says he minds his own business and reads a lot. Though he's trying to use his time constructively, he's still angry he's in jail because, as Harold Dow tells us, Tyson doesn't believe he belongs there and is appealing the rape conviction.
Like a
Tyson didn't rape Desiree Washington. He's innocent of the charges, and if the full story had come out, he would have been acquitted.
You think Mike Tyson belongs in jail?
Damn right he belongs in jail. Just like anybody else who commits a rape belongs in jail.
This is Suite 606 in the Canterbury Hotel. Mike Tyson was sentenced to 6 years in prison for raping Desiree Washington in this room. But 4 months after his trial and conviction, there is still a lingering difference of opinion about what happened here.
I left Indianapolis, Indiana to see the world, but I came back and discovered the world in Indianapolis, Indiana.
The road that led to room 606 began during the Miss Black America pageant, where Tyson met Desiree Washington while taping this promotional video.
I'm in a dream, day after day. Beautiful women in such an array. Oh, you must try that again.
Contestant 8, Desiree Washington from Coventry, Rhode Island.
They agreed to go out that evening. Tyson called her from his limousine after midnight. They drove from her hotel to the Canterbury, just a block away, and went up to his room at about 1:30 in the morning. The jury believed Washington, that she thought she was going up to Tyson's room to pick up something before they went out again. She says she had no idea that they were going up to his room to have sex. Washington says there had been no indications earlier in the day that that's what Tyson wanted. And once inside the bedroom, Washington says that's when Tyson changed, from a sweet, nice person to an animal.
The only issue in this case is what happened in that room on that night.
Attorney Alan Dershowitz is handling Mike Tyson's appeal.
There was possibly a terrible misunderstanding here between a man who understood the rules that operate between professional athletes and rock stars on the one hand and groupies, and a young woman who acted like a groupie, behaved like a groupie, came to the room like a groupie, and then decided after it was all over she didn't want to be treated like a groupie.
That argument was no good when it was made the first time.
Oh, great. We're going well. Very pleased.
Greg Garrison led the prosecution team for the state of Indiana.
Tyson and Washington agree that Tyson said to her after he finished with her, "You may stay the night." If she was a groupie trying to be successful, being invited to stay the night with the champ is a lot more important than just having sex with him and getting walked to the car. The argument falls on its face. Had that all happened and she was a groupie, she says, touchdown.
Do you have a problem? Yes, I'm calling to report a rape.
In fact, Washington left Tyson's room and 24 hours later called 911.
And the person started attacking me. Not attacking me, but like he being very aggressive, trying to take my clothes off, and then just basically forced himself upon me.
She testified that he asked her in the middle of the sexual encounter, "Now would you like to get on top?" And she testified that she responded, "Yeah." In her own mind, she said she responded, "Yeah," because that would put her in a better position to control the situation. So even her own testimony, discussions of whether he should use a condom, discussions about whether he was going to make her pregnant, this doesn't sound like a rape.
He has the faintest concept of what he's talking about. He didn't get raped. He's a man. He doesn't know a damn thing about rape. He doesn't know about nightmares. He doesn't know about a ruined life that never gets better.
The littlest things, it doesn't really matter how much they cost. Sometimes are the prettiest things.
Dershowitz also points to Washington's behavior in the days after the incident.
It looks the best. Thank you.
She continued to participate in the pageant.
Hello, my name is Desiree. My ideal mate is athletic.
Washington says she wasn't about to quit, even though she was in pain.
Because I love a man who loves to debate.
But these days, Alan Dershowitz is less concerned with Desiree Washington's behavior. Did Mike Tyson receive a fair trial in your courtroom?
I believe he did.
Than that of Judge Patricia Gifford.
This was not a judge. It was an advocate. It was a prosecutor in robes.
Did you want to talk to her at all?
No.
He's looking for trial mistakes by the state on which to base his appeal.
You can't have a fair trial when the prosecutor picks the judge. That's my point.
Garrison denies that happened. But it is possible in Indianapolis for a prosecutor to position a trial with a particular judge.
I've heard that argument advanced that because I have prosecuted rape cases that I shouldn't be trying them. I don't know that it gives me any more advantage, disadvantage. It probably gives me more insight into both sides.
She gave the wrong instruction.
Another appeal issue for Dershowitz, Giffords' instruction to the jury.
We went through everything. We wanted to be sure of what we did, and we wanted to be fair.
One of the jurors in an interview said afterward, "We believe both Desiree Washington and Mike Tyson. The law is clear. You're supposed to acquit under those circumstances." And the judge gave the wrong instruction. It's a traditional instruction given all over the country, indeed all over the Western world. But the judge in this case failed to do it.
If Pat Gifford didn't give him a fair trial in this case, then they're suggesting that it is not possible in 1992 for anybody to get a fair trial ever in a case like this.
But there is one appeal element about the trial that everyone seems to agree is in question.
There's only one real issue, and that's these late-blooming witnesses that showed up on Sunday evening when I was going to rest on Monday morning.
He's referring to the three witnesses who said they saw Tyson enter the Canterbury Hotel with a woman on his arm at about 1:30 that morning.
They would have proved that the testimony of Desiree Washington was false.
To me,
Judge Gifford refused to let them testify, saying they didn't add anything new and had taken too long to come forward.
that is one of the issues that is up for appeal, so I'm not at liberty to comment on that.
I saw something and I feel that it may be important.
Later in this hour, you'll get to hear what the jury couldn't hear.
I saw two people hugging and kissing all over each other.
For the first time, one of the witnesses at the Canterbury Hotel that night speaks out.
And I just want the truth to be told and everyone to tell the truth.
What do you say to the jury that convicted you? You think you got a fair shot?
Well, there's no way I could have got it. How could I have got a fair shot? I mean, I knew I was innocent. I knew from court procedures and what was going on, but I knew when I was in that court and when I was going to get that verdict, I knew the verdict was going to be guilty because of the mentality of the court and the mentality of the prosecutor.
What did you think of the prosecutor?
The prosecutor, I thought he was a racist, weak, publicity-happy, little weak man. And I just felt it, but I was, I was always nervous and worried because I knew that it was going to take me away from people that I loved, but I was just prepared for it.
You were prepared to give it up?
It was something, that couldn't be stopped.
When we come back, Mike Tyson talks about who's in charge of his money now. And for the first time since his conviction, he tells us his version of what happened that night in Indianapolis.
I asked her to wear something short, like a short dress or some wide, loose, baggy shorts. And she came in the car, we kissed, and we were making out, okay?
Joining me now, Harold Dow. You've followed Mike Tyson's career from the very beginning, interviewing him a number of times over the years.
That's true, Ed.
You know, Harold, prison is a place where a lot of people said he'd end up.
Well, Ed, that's true. Tyson once told me if it weren't for boxing, he'd be dead or in jail. But as we see, he was wrong. I first met him in 1985. He was only 18 years old. Few people knew who he was. There were no large crowds. Tyson was living that lonely life, sweating out early morning workouts on the back roads of Catskill, New York. And in his spare time, tending his pigeons.
They're like my brothers and sisters, my friends. Because I don't have to worry about them asking me for any money or trying to get over me or do anything or trying to hurt me for any reason.
Catskill was worlds away from the mean streets of Brownsville, New York, where Tyson grew up.
It was pretty bad. It was nothing seeing people getting shot over dice games or killed over a dice game or something, or card games. It was part of life.
Tyson was a tough street kid. He admitted to being a hardened criminal by age 11.
I became confident. If you could steal things and get away with it, we started stealing all the time. I was nervous and everything, but it was fun.
Tyson sounded grateful for the experience.
Thank you for letting me rob you, because if I never robbed you, I would never got arrested and I would never be here.
This coat was stolen by the fastest runner in the world.
But Tyson was rescued from the mean streets and his life of crime by legendary boxing trainer Cus D'Amato.
But a certain amount of pain suffering is good because it makes a person think they learn.
He was just like a great father. He did everything to make his son happy. The first day he even met me, he took me in his house. He didn't even know me.
You're going to do real damage. You might drop the guy with one punch.
D'Amato nurtured Tyson both in and out of the ring, but never lived to see him become champion. Tyson was 19, on the verge of stardom when D'Amato died. Tyson lost much more than a mentor.
He needed a father.
Camille Ewald lived with D'Amato. Today, she still considers Tyson her son.
Cus didn't have enough time at all. The time he only had, he gave him how to fight. That's about all. But actually, how to live, he didn't have enough time.
Hey, how you doing, my man?
All right.
You gonna be the next champ or what? That's why I'm in the business for, of course.
But no one ever thought Tyson would take care of business like this. Tyson quickly smashed his way to the top.
Tyson misses with an uppercut, then lands a left hook, and the champion is down.
With this knockout of Trevor Berbick, November 22nd, 1986, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history, just 20 years old.
Thomas trying to hold on. Serious trouble, and down he goes.
Tyson was unstoppable inside the ropes.
And down goes.
But he quickly learned that in this game, only the ring is square.
In this business, the guys with the three-piece suits are bigger crips than the guys in Brownsville. They're horrible people.
Is that right?
The promoters, the managers, everyone's just horrible people.
Tyson made them all very, very wealthy. In June of 1988, Tyson earned over $20 million in just 91 seconds with this knockout of Michael Spinks.
The night of the Spinks fight, in my judgment, Mike Tyson was the second best fighter of all time.
Bill Caton managed Tyson's career from the beginning, but was forced out of his job the night of the Spinks fight.
Had he not been under the influence of those women and Don King, I believe he would have been as great a heroic figure as Muhammad Ali. He changed entirely. His marriage and Don King changed him into a different person.
At least that's what many people saw. After his marriage to Robin Givens and his association with Don King, Tyson's life seemed to unravel in full public view. Lawsuits, car accidents, and domestic brawls.
The Burnsville Police Department received a call indicating a disturbance was in progress at the Tyson residence.
Tyson seemed more violent out of the ring than in it, and on February 11th, 1990, he lost his championship when James Buster Douglas knocked him out.
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
Tyson never got a chance to regain his title, his career, his life, all derailed in Indianapolis. Don King is the man that many blame for Mike Tyson's problems both in and out of the ring. I came here to Cleveland and spoke with Don King at length, but under orders from his attorney, Don King refused to appear on camera. Don King is facing a grand jury investigation, and there are accusations that he mishandled Mike Tyson's money. Don King denies all of those accusations and says they all originate with Bill Caton. The charges and countercharges between King and Caton have been going on for years. But those closest to Mike Tyson say it all boils down to one thing.
They didn't care about Mike. They cared about money.
Camille Ewald says if Cus D'Amato were alive, none of these questionable things would have happened to Mike. Ed?
Thanks, Harold. I mentioned that to Tyson, and I asked him what he thought Cus would say today.
Well, because it's something that you can't answer because Cus is not here. You know what I mean? People, they always put that, you know what I mean? They put that like that's a boundary on me. Well, Cus will look at you and be ashamed. I'm my own man now. I'm me. I'm my own man.
Your finances, are you comfortable with your finances, your money, the control you have over your money?
Absolutely. You know what I mean? About a situation like that, when I was in this situation, no one never, you know what I mean, approached me with something like that before when I was out in the streets, you know what I mean? Now this is only a ploy for somebody to attack Don or do something like that. You know what I mean? I'm very happy with my finance. Just because someone else may not know anything about my finance or might come up with a sheet and say, well, he has nothing. And then next week they'll come up with a sheet. What happened to this money? They don't show no account of what happened to this $45 million or this $20 million. And now all of a sudden, I'm hiding money. And if I was hiding money, and if it's my money, I haven't stolen it, isn't it my business to do what I want with it?
Do you know what you have?
Well, I have a ballpark figure, yes.
And you know where it is, and you have control of it?
Well, like I was saying, it's my business, and no one else should worry about how much money I have. You know what I mean? No one should worry about how much Donald Trump has. I never asked how much he has. I never asked how much the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds have, or Magic Johnson, any athlete by that. Nobody asks about that. Why all of a sudden they want to worry about me by putting me in a situation? Because the fact is, they can't take away, which I know, that I'm a great fighter. So they say, God, he's a great fighter. People admire him for that. But let's put him, he's a great fighter, but he's dumb and he's stupid. So, you know what I mean? He's nobody to look up to. But because that's okay, because only time will tell. I mean, that's just time will tell.
You mentioned Don King. What about Don King?
Now, Don King is just like anyone else. Anybody else that's in big business. He's competitive. He competes with them. You know what I mean? He's the best at what he does, whatever it is. If it's, you know what I mean? He broke all the records, all the P.T. Barnum, Ziegfeld records. He, you know what I mean? He breaks all those records. And he's ornery and he's arrogant, you know what I mean? He says, well, he's not under control. You don't control him. You can't say, well, Don, you take this and you do this, but you got to take, you know what I mean? He wants the American way. He wants to get the equal share of the pie.
Does he take advantage of you?
Everyone uses someone. He uses me, I uses him. The worst thing, we never misuse one another. We respect one another. I never cut it. Don is my man, and that's what it is to it.
Coming up next, for the first time outside of court, Mike Tyson talks about the night that changed his life and the life of a teenage beauty contestant named Desiree Washington.
We went upstairs, and we went in my room. So when I closed the door, we went in my room. We sat on my bed. She sat in my bed.
Welcome back to a special Street Stories and our exclusive interview with Mike Tyson. One writer compared it to a collision between a tank and a tricycle. The tank was Tyson at 240 pounds, the tricycle, a 108-pound teenage beauty contestant named Desiree Washington. What happened? Desiree Washington convinced an Indiana jury it was rape. Mike Tyson, as you're about to hear, says it was something else altogether. However, Tyson and Washington do agree on one thing. It started when he asked her out in Indianapolis last July 19th.
Mike, if a woman agrees to go out with you, does that automatically mean that she's agreed to have sex with you?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. See, this was a situation where we had discussed things that were going to happen, what we were planning on doing, you know what I mean? And we have discussed something. This is something that's been discussed and planned, and you say, well, since she's going out, she has to do it. She can't eat a free meal. You give me like that ghetto mentality, of course, like when I'm stereotyped. She can't get a free meal without giving me something or something like that, which is, you know what I mean, it's just perverted. What you even saying that to me. You know what I mean?
She has told her version publicly on television. What was it that made you feel that she wanted to have sex with you?
Well, as I was talking, we spoke earlier that day. We had spoke earlier that day, and we had planned on the situation. You know, everything was arranged, and then I seen her again, and it was arranged again. I seen her twice that day, and we, you know, I mean, we arranged it then again, and that's how I came to that conclusion.
There was no doubt in your mind?
In neither one of our minds.
Then let me just ask you to tell me, as you recollect, what happened that night?
I called her. I think she was tired or something. I said, don't worry about it. Just comb your hair and put water in your face. And I asked her to wear something short, like a short dress or some wide, loose, baggy shorts. And she came in the car, we kissed, and we were making out, okay? Fooling around. Then we drove right around the corner to my hotel room. We got out of my hotel room, we went upstairs, and we went in my room. So when I closed the door, we went in my room. We sat on my bed. She sat on my bed in somewhat of a Buddha position, you know, when the legs were crossed. And she was talking, and we started kissing. And she started pulling off her clothes. She was getting hot. She was getting aggressive. And I started, we had oral sex, and then eventually we had vaginal sex. And after it was over, I invited her to stay. I said, because I'm tired, perhaps, because you had to get up at around 5 or 6, and I had to leave at approximately 2 hours. We both had the same schedule, approximately. But she didn't want to do, but she wanted me to walk her downstairs, and I didn't want to walk her. I said, well, my limo's downstairs, you could take the limo, but I'm sorry, I'm tired, and I have to get up, and I just can't walk you. Maybe I should have just walked her downstairs or something. We should never cry over spilled milk, of course, but maybe I should have just walked her downstairs, you know, it's Christ. And the next week I heard about this.
And you're saying that she never said no?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, she said that I hit him, I cried, I did anything to get him to stop, nothing worked.
Oh, right, really, please. You know what I mean? Come on, that wasn't true. In a hotel room, in the middle of the night, where you know walls probably echo because it's so quiet, you know, and she screamed, and then she's gonna say she's in shock. She walked downstairs. Evidently, me, the person, you know what I mean, she told me she's been sheltered, please. And if anybody would attack me, as soon as I get out in the hallway, I'm gone. I lost it. I'm in the twilight zone. Woo, help, yes, help, right here, knocking on people's doors. Come in, this guy's right in here. Please help me, or whatever. You know what I mean? That's absurd. Well, I'm scared because he's Mike Tyson. That's, I mean, they insult the American intelligence, you know what I mean, to believe something like that. You know, this is something, I mean, that you don't have to be F. Lee Bailey. You know what I mean? You don't have to be F. Lee Bailey at all to decipher the bull crap. You know what I mean? And it upsets me so much because there's people out there, you know what I mean, that have that kind of mentality, you know what I mean, that will believe something. You know what I mean? It just is, it's astonishing that what people believe.
The truth of the matter of what happened that night then is what?
That she was not raped.
The Indiana jurors didn't believe Tyson. They believed Desiree Washington, and in February convicted Tyson of rape. Desiree Washington has refused to talk to us about Tyson or that night in Indianapolis. But the fighters' problems there were not limited to what happened with Miss Washington. Tyson was in town attending the Miss Black America beauty pageant. And some witnesses say from the moment he arrived, there was trouble.
Oh, I'm in a dream day after day. Beautiful women, such an array.
Some of the women around Tyson that day say he was doing more than rapping.
He put his arm around me, and I thought it was going to my waist, but it went to my rear end, and he rubbed it and squeezed or whatever, and I knocked his hand off of me, and I told him not to disrespect me in that manner.
Former Miss Black America Rosie Jones is suing Tyson for $100 million.
It's not so much the money, it's the fact that he's not above the law, and right now I believe he thinks that he is.
All of the women wanted him, you know, from the top models to, you know, every woman, you know.
Model Beverly Johnson says it's not so simple. She knew Tyson at the height of his fame and sees sexual aggression as a two-way street.
I mean, he used to come back and tell me some stories. Wow, this girl did this, and this girl liked me, and this one wanted me, and I went from this room to that room, and this room to that room. I'm going, wow.
But along with the fame came accusations, often in the form of million-dollar lawsuits, that when it came to women, Tyson was out of control. One of the strongest accusations came on ABC's 2020 from his then-wife, Robin Givens.
He shakes, he pushes, he swings. Sometimes I think he's trying to scare me.
I tried to scream, but he has his hand over my mouth.
Recently, Bill Cosby's daughter, Erin, claimed that she too had been attacked by Tyson.
And he locked the door, and he ran after me, and the next thing I know, I'm on the ground, on my stomach, you know, with my hands behind my back. You know, it was just a lot of struggling.
Erin Cosby said that you tried to rape her and that her father, when he heard about it, got you to agree to go into therapy. Is that true?
Well, I could give you some answers, and you could tell me if they're true. You know what I mean? I never been to therapy. He never told me that he wanted me to go to. He never told me personally that he wanted me to go to therapy. He's seen me a number of times after the incident happened. He never confronted me with any issues about that or anything. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? What Aaron is saying is not true at all.
And the women at the contest that day in Indianapolis who said that you fondled a number of women.
But listen, you must understand what kind of atmosphere. When you make that statement, you come across as if I just ran in that hall, right, and no, it wasn't like that. It was a joyous atmosphere. People have grabbed me. You know what I mean? They all, it's like 15, 20, something like they tagged me, grabbed me. You know, we're talking crap, and we're speaking as young, healthy, black, you know, young adults do. We're talking crap and this and that, and things occurred. You know what I mean? After this situation happened, and people all start saying, well, maybe I can get something out of it. Maybe then their mind, the wheels start rolling in another direction then. But at that particular situation, there was no complaints about anything.
So it wasn't initiated by you. You just participated.
Absolutely.
They come after you as much as you go after them.
Please, because this is something I don't even have to explain to you. You know what I mean? People know who I am, and people know I have money, and people know I'm young. You know what I mean? So they put the two together: young, black, single, with money, usually by himself, never protective, because that's the kind of guy. I'm always loose. I'm like, and that's dangerous because you gotta use that with the same stereotype as the sheep that flocks away from the crowd, and he's out there, now he's alone. Now the wolves could trap him off, corner him off, and kill him. And that's how my situation was. I'm a loner, and that's my only downfall, because that's my nature. I'm always alone. I'm always moving.
You think women used you or tried to use you?
Of course they did, but look, I looked at it from the standpoint, you know what I mean? I was young, you know what I mean? I wanted to have fun. I enjoyed having fun. And maybe I took it further, maybe me wanting to be with some girl or make love to a girl, whatever. Do that, but they probably had something different, you know what I mean? I had in my mind what I wanted, but they never let me know what they wanted. You know what I mean? So maybe that's my fault for not knowing, not saying, well, what do you want from this situation?
You say people who don't know you, people form impressions about you. Here's a guy who is strong, who's black, who's uneducated, who's a heavyweight champion. He thinks he can have whatever he wants. How do you respond to people who look at you and think that that's true?
90%, 80% of the people believe what they read. And, I mean, that have a big effect on people. If they ever got a chance to know me, they would think differently. They would think totally differently. They would know I'm just like everyone. I like to play. I like to fool around. I like to chew fat. You know what I mean? I just like I do basically any young 25-year-old do. I used to do all my life. That's the way I am. I'm just normal. And that's why I'm in trouble, because I'm normal and slightly arrogant. You know what I mean? I get a little arrogant because I'm confident. You know, I know whatever I do, I know I'm the best at it. You know, and people get upset with that. But, you know what I mean? That's a part of me which a lot of people don't like, because a lot of people don't like themselves. And I happen to be totally in love with myself. You know what I mean? People take offense to that.
When it comes to Tyson and women, it's often a question of whom you want to believe. Rarely are there any independent witnesses. But tonight, for the first time, you're about to hear from one. She told Harold Dow she was one of 3 women who just happened to be at that Indianapolis hotel when Tyson and Washington arrived.
I know what I saw. I know what day I was here. I saw Mike Tyson kissing a woman at 1:30 in the morning outside this hotel.
More importantly, did you see her kiss him?
They were kissing each other.
Carla Martin was not allowed to testify at the trial. The judge said, in effect, that Martin didn't add anything important to Tyson's defense. But Tyson's lawyers say she directly challenges Desiree Washington's credibility. Washington testified that while they were in the limousine in front of Tyson's hotel, he didn't try to touch her or express any affection.
I was sitting in the car. The car was parked about right here. A limousine pulls up. And I could see 2 people kissing, but as the car pulls up to here, I'm looking dead in the back of this car, okay? And they're kissing all over each other right here.
She looked like she wanted to be where she was at?
Yes.
In his arms, kissing him?
Yes. She got out of the car first, okay? And she was just kind of standing here, and then he got out about where you're standing. But he had turned this way. That's how I knew it was him, because I was sitting here. And she walked up.
Grabbed him in their arm like that?
And they walked in.
Inside the hotel together?
As far as them kissing or not, I can say, yes, she was kissing him. So, yes, she did lie. She kissed him, you know. But as far as him committing the rape, I can't say whether he did it or not. You understand? Because I was not there.
Tyson's lawyers hoped to get a new trial partly because Carla Martin was not allowed to testify. Her testimony in court could threaten Desiree Washington's credibility. It was contradictions in Tyson's testimony, telling a slightly different story to the grand jury than in the trial, that jurors say helped convict him. In a moment, startling revelations from another big man who's walked in Tyson's shoes.
You're number one in your bedroom, you're number one in your bathroom, you're number one going down the street. It's probably a little too much for a young man.
Mike Tyson's troubles are not unique. Just ask other fighters. That's what Harold Dow did. He discovered that often the most formidable force a boxer can face is not necessarily in the ring, but sometimes in himself.
When you're heavyweight champ of the world, you believe that you can get away with anything.
George Foreman knows what it's like to be on top.
You're number one in your bedroom, you're number one in your bathroom, you're number one going down the street. It's probably a little too much for a young man.
You get caught up into the game, the lie.
Tony Ayala found that out after he hit bottom.
You sometimes convince yourself that you can buy your way out of any problem, that you don't need to adhere to the rules, that you can make your own rules.
My dream is to be champ of the world, too.
But young boxers like James Butler don't worry about the price they have to pay.
Have you thought about any of this? I mean, yeah, I thought about it a lot. I just say, I just got to deal with it when it come along, you know.
Butler is 19, a Golden Gloves middleweight champ from Harlem. Inside the ropes, Tyson is a role model. But outside?
He didn't know how to control himself. He didn't know how to control himself. And all that fame and fortune, man, you did something to go to jail on. I mean, it don't make any sense.
The same thing that's going wrong with Mike Tyson went wrong with George Foreman also. A lot of people don't know, in 1976, I was in New York City. Just got into a big scrape with a young lady. I mean, in trouble, fighting. Here were the major detectives and police in my hotel room. And they talked to the lady. She wanted me arrested, and they said, well, you know, this is it. And it was over the board. I was guilty in the whole deal. Well, I came within inches of the same thing that happened to Mike Tyson.
The 43-year-old Foreman has turned himself into a positive role model since those wild days as champion.
I used to have a lot of problems with the police.
Now he wants kids to join the police.
If you'll sign up and get on the beat sick.
Not run from them.
Become a Eastern cop.
He'd like the chance to talk to Tyson.
He's at a stage where he needs people to know, hey, I care about you. Don't want anything, I just care about you. When you're young, you become heavyweight champ of the world. The downside is there's no one to tell you, hey, stop.
Stop what?
Stop this, you know. Don't push the woman. Don't cuss the police. Don't speed. Don't commit this, don't commit that. Who can tell you when you're this magnificent force that everybody's afraid of it? You consider yourself the baddest man on the planet. Who can tell you no?
And sometimes things can spin totally out of control.
I had it all, and it got away from me.
When Mike Tyson was starting out as a young boxer, he admired the savage fighting style of an undefeated middleweight named Tony Ayala. Ayala was called El Torito, the Little Bull. Today, Ayala is known as inmate number 69765 at this state correctional facility in Rahway, New Jersey.
Still undefeated!
Ayala was 22-0, poised for a shot at the middleweight title with his very next fight when he was convicted of rape in 1983. At 20 years of age, he began serving a 35-year sentence with no hope for parole until 1998. When we spoke to Mike, he said, I didn't do anything. I shouldn't be here. I didn't rape this woman.
You can't fix an engine if it isn't broken. And the only one who knows whether the engine is broken, whether there's a problem with Mike Tyson or not, is Mike Tyson.
A few years ago, Ayala was alarmed by the controversy swirling around Tyson's personal life and tried unsuccessfully to phone him. What would you have said to Mike?
I probably would have spoken to him quite strongly. Listen, you jerk, stop this behavior. You're destroying this, you're destroying that, you're hurting this, you're hurting that.
George Foreman also thought he could see where Tyson was heading.
He left a trail behind him ever since he was 19. Basically, he didn't surround himself with a lot of people who really cared about him.
Certainly those around him should have had a serious talk with Mike Tyson. But the brunt of the responsibility for what happened should be carried by Mike. He put himself where he's at.
There's no doubt in my mind that Mike Tyson's going to get out of jail and he's going to be a better person because of it. And I think that they shouldn't give up on Mike Tyson. He's going to write a new book, a whole another page in his life in a couple of years. Heavyweight champ of the world, overcome adversity, and a man to be listened to.
And I'm doing this interview only because I want this man to get his life together and go out there, kick some ass, win that title back, and redeem himself. Perhaps because that's what I want to do, and I'm not given that chance.
Send the message. Send the message.
Because there are still people who look up to Mike Tyson.
There you go. That's what you want.
People like James Butler.
Even though he did what people say he did, you know, I'm not gonna stop, you know, saying I admire Mike Tyson. You know, I still admire him.
Hook too wide. Hook too wide.
They killed his parents. They killed his wife. Obviously, they don't know they're dealing with a man untamed, a man trained by the best. He's Raven, coming Wednesday to CBS. Now get ready for Lee Horsley and the premiere of Bodies of Evidence, next. Street Stories, a production of